I said something big was going to happen because of this eclipse, and many people called me crazy. I know, folks, that eclipses have always happened, but now this eclipse here, it's different because it came to announce that something big is coming. In fact, every eclipse you see is always like this. It always announces something big. I can prove it by looking in the Bible, and that's what I'm going to do right here now. Look, I posted this video here 5 days ago, and I said something very big was coming, but I didn't know what it was. Especially since this blood moon was going to happen on the day of Purim, which is the Jewish holiday that celebrates the deliverance of the Jewish people. And by coincidence, right, we know there's no such thing as coincidence. 2 days ago, the war started there involving Israel and several countries, and even Dubai is involved in the middle of it. Then people will come saying, no, war has always happened, right? Have you noticed it's always like that? When you show a sign, they say, oh, that's always happened. Then you show a sign, oh, that's always happened. I know, folks, it's always happened, but now it's different. We are talking about a war on the level of a World War III. Haven't you been able to realize that yet? But how did I know that this blood moon that's going to happen tomorrow would bring something very big? I knew it by doing exactly what Jesus told us to do. Observe the signs, something that many people are ignoring. Now we're going to the Bible, and you're going to go crazy with what I'm going to show you right now. If you want to stay deluded, thinking everything's fine, thinking everything's normal, that is just another day, just another moon, just another sun, just another war, I suggest you leave this video right now, because what I'm going to show you here is proven in the Bible. First, in Genesis, when God created the sky, moon, stars, he said he created these celestial bodies, and he said they would be used as signs. Signs here are to signal something. Jesus said that when his coming is near, there would be signs both on earth and in the sky, exactly what we're seeing happen now. And I know these signs have always happened, but not with this intensity, not all at the same time. Eclipses like this, have they always happened? Yes, but whenever it's happened, something big happens right after. I'm not referring to a partial eclipse, I'm referring to a total eclipse, just like the one that's going to happen tomorrow. Now, going to the Bible, look, pay attention here to what the prophet Amos is saying. This is clearly a solar eclipse, which is different from the eclipse that will happen tomorrow, which is a lunar eclipse. Do you see what the verse is saying? Here is God himself saying, and how is it possible for the sun to set like that at noon? At the time it was written, maybe whoever wrote it didn't understand, but today looking at it, we know that what's going to happen here is a total solar eclipse. And what would a solar eclipse be? It's the moon placing itself in front of the sun. This phenomenon lasts a few minutes, so in some parts of the earth it gets totally dark. Then the moon moves from in front of the sun and everything goes back to normal. So what is the Bible saying? That this is a sign. And this one in particular is a sign given by God himself. Want another sign? There is one. Look here at what the prophet Joel is saying exactly in this verse here. And look at him speaking again. Before the day of the Lord comes, the moon will turn into blood. Exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, folks. The moon is going to turn into blood. Does this mean that Jesus is coming back tonight or coming back tomorrow? Does it mean he's coming back in the next few hours? No. It just means a phenomenon similar to what will happen tomorrow will occur when Jesus returns. So what is the Bible actually saying? It's saying these phenomena serve to show that something big is going to happen. They serve as signs. Remember that the moon and the sun were created to be signs as well. And when these signs occur, it shows that something big is coming. And in this current case, it shows the war that is happening over in Israel. In other words, the sign happened here and then the event followed right after. Do you want another sign? I'll tell you right now. Look here at what was happening when Jesus was on the cross. It was noon and the earth became totally dark until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And here we see a total solar eclipse, once again announcing that something big is happening at that very moment. A total eclipse announces that something big is coming. And at this moment here, announcing that the King of Kings was being delivered for the sins of the world. In other words, a solar eclipse announcing that something big was happening. But here it was different. Do you know why? Because the Jewish Passover happens when the moon is full. And the problem here is that there was no possibility of a solar eclipse happening at that time. A solar eclipse happens during a new moon. So what do we see here? It is something supernatural. Even against all odds, the sun on that day announced that something big had happened. If you think that was impossible, look at what's going to happen now in Revelation. Take a look at what the book of Revelation is actually saying here. The sun will turn completely dark and the moon will be turned into blood. Now this seems impossible to happen, but according to the prophecy, it is still going to happen anyway. Here we see a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse happening simultaneously, and that's just not possible. It clearly says here that the moon will turn red like blood. It's easy for that to happen. The moon just has to be behind the earth relative to the sun. Then the earth will cast a shadow on the moon, and the only light that will illuminate it will be from our atmosphere. This phenomenon lasts a few minutes and causes the moon to turn reddish. So what we have here is a lunar eclipse. As I said, it will only last a few minutes, and that's exactly what will happen tomorrow. And tomorrow's will last exactly 58 minutes. NASA has already done the calculations. But in this case, in Revelation, it says that while the blood moon is happening, the sun will also go dark. How is that possible? For the sun to go dark, the moon would have to be in front of the earth. And we know that at this moment, the moon will be behind the earth. My God, what exactly is happening here? Well, but we have some explanations. First, unless a lunar eclipse is happening, making the moon red, and the thing that will make the sun dark could be the same thing that made the sun dark when Jesus died. Because when Jesus died, there was a solar eclipse. And I've already said here in this video that there was no way to have a solar eclipse on that day. And yet it happened. And now we see it happening here again. This means that what happened there can happen here again. The same thing that announced the death of Jesus will announce that Jesus is returning. Is there another explanation? There is too. In Revelation, it shows that when Jesus returns, Israel will be at war. In fact, everyone will be fighting against Israel, and this war makes a lot of smoke. There's smoke from the missiles, there's the dust from the things being destroyed, and all this smoke goes into the atmosphere. And it could be that this smoke in the atmosphere can leave the sun darkened from so much pollution. When Jesus returns, there will be many nations fighting against Israel, exactly what is happening now. And then Jesus arrives and destroys the enemies of Israel, and the millennium begins. Of course, I skipped many things here, okay? Many things will happen until it reaches that point. But if I keep talking about them one by one here, this video will take more than an hour, and we won't be able to talk about everything. Now let's hear from Jesus himself speaking. He said this regarding his return. He said that immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. And soon after, he will say that he will appear in the sky and will seek his church. And here, once again, we see that the total solar eclipse will happen before Jesus returns. That's why I told you, total solar eclipse and total lunar eclipse always announce that something big is coming. And when Jesus returns, a solar eclipse will be happening, which is different from tomorrow, which is a lunar eclipse. Open your eyes because Jesus is returning and there is no more time to lose.